What is going on, man? This is Patrick James here, and today I want to answer a question that I got via Facebook from a man named Chris CB. Now, Chris asked me a very interesting question, and he basically just asked me, what advice would I give to someone when they hear "just be yourself" from someone else and they don't know who they are themselves, all right? How would I tell someone to be themselves if they don't know who they are? And I like this question a lot because a lot of times people who either don't know what they're talking about or they're naturally confident and don't know how to verbalize how to be confident, cool, collected, charismatic, they'll often say things like, dude, just be yourself, or dude, just be cool, when in reality that means nothing to you because you want to be cool and you want to be yourself, but you don't know who yourself is. So I understand where you're coming from, Chris, and thank you for the question. So I have an acronym. All right, and I just came up with this on the spot, so forgive me if you don't think it's clever, but here's the acronym. It's called the MET model to just being yourself, MET. And you can remember this by thinking when someone talks about when they met you, they're going to talk about how awesome you were, how cool you were, how calm and collected and charismatic you were when they talk about when they met you for the first time. So M stands for models. And here's what I mean by this. A lot of people who think they want to improve themselves or they think they want to be cool, charismatic, confident, and courageous, they're afraid to model other people because they think if they model someone else, then they're not being themselves. When this is completely backwards thinking, and here's what I mean. If you actually admire someone else, you like something that they have, a character trait, maybe it's a piece of clothing that they're wearing, and you actually like that, there's nothing wrong for you to actually model that in yourself. Because if you actually vibe with that, then it's probably something that you want to develop more of in yourself. And when you do develop more of that in yourself, then you actually are being yourself because you're being congruent, because you actually vibe with that type of personality trait or maybe that piece of clothing. So don't be afraid to model other people. Now here's the thing, here's the trick. Here's where you're not going to be yourself if you're finding other models, is if you're modeling someone simply because someone else tells you that you should model them. I want you to find people who you actually vibe with, people who you actually admire and look up to, and then model those people, because when you do that and you successfully model them, that's when you're actually being your highest self. You're bringing your best self, your most ideal self to fruition. So M stands for models. E stands for experiment. And here's what I mean by this. My arm's getting tired, so I'm going to try to make this quick. Experiment. You should experiment with different things. If you like several different people and they have different styles, for example, I like Ryan Gosling in Crazy Stupid Love, and I also like Russell Brand in every single interview, all right? Two very different types of people. But I'm going to experiment with different things that I admire in both of their personalities. Maybe it's the way they dress. Maybe it's the way they talk. Maybe it's the way they joke around with people. Maybe it's the types of jokes that they crack. I'm going to experiment with different things that they do and then find what I like the most. So I'm going to experiment. And I like to think of this as the David Data example of the onion. All right, so David Data is a writer, and he wrote a book called The Way of the Superior Man. You've probably heard of this book before. And in this book, he talks about an onion. So if you want to find your life purpose, you want to find your core, it's like the core of an onion in the very center. But to get to the core, you got to start at the very outside layer. And this is the same to finding yourself, dude. You got to start at the outside, and every time you experiment, then you're basically just peeling away one layer at a time. You're finding what actually vibes with you in the core. So E is experiment. And then T stands for trust your gut. All right? As you're experimenting, as you're finding models, and as you're trying to become the highest, most ideal version of yourself, the most charismatic, confident, and courageous version of yourself, trust your gut. Okay? And I'll give you a personal example for this. When about 3 or 4 years ago, when I realized that I needed to improve my style, because back in the day, back in college, I was the kind of guy who was wearing basketball shorts, basketball shoes, and Nike t-shirts all the time. All right, I was wearing Jordan shirts and it was all baggy. And I realized that as an adult, as a functioning human being, as someone who's trying to become a more attractive, charismatic version of myself, I had to improve my style. I had to step that shit up. So the first thing that I did was I found some models that I admired. I liked their style. So the first people that I chose were the Express models at Express. All right, if you've ever been to a mall, you've probably heard of the store Express. And all those guys look super dapper. They're wearing skinny ties, they're wearing skinny pants, and I was the king of the skinny tie when I started buying clothes to improve my fashion. But over time, I realized that I didn't really vibe with the skinny tie. I wasn't made to be a dapper individual. So I kind of went more West Coast with my style. I was buying t-shirts, v-necks, I was wearing bracelets, I was wearing jeans, darker colors, more neutral colors, and that's something that I vibed with the most. Now, here's where trusting your gut comes in. If I didn't trust my gut, I would still be dressing in super dapper clothes, even though it didn't vibe with my personality as I am, all right? And because I trusted my gut, I was able to say, okay, maybe this doesn't work, and I peeled away that layer, and then I kind of shifted 90 degrees. So I'm still fashionable, and I'm still wearing fitted clothes, but it's a different style, all right? So I trusted my gut, I went in a different direction, and now I'm more true to myself. I'm being myself. So here's the thing. Models, find models. Don't be afraid to model people who you admire. Experiment, all right? Peel back the layers of the onion. Experiment with different things that you like, and then trust your gut. When you find something that you don't really vibe with, even though it's something that you admired in the past, but you'll find that maybe you don't really vibe with it. It doesn't really match your personality. It's not congruent to who you are. Trust your gut, and then stick with the things that actually vibe with you. Stick with the things that you actually like doing, and you will eventually become your highest self as you keep going down this road using this model. Now, here's one caveat that I will close this video out with. You're not gonna wanna do things that you see people who you admire doing all the time. And you might say, okay, because I don't wanna do that, I'm gonna trust my gut and not do that, all right? There is a fine line to this. You're gonna have to push your comfort zone. You're gonna have to do things that you're uncomfortable doing. You're gonna have to do things that maybe you don't feel like is you. That's why you experiment. If you see someone doing something and it's kind of getting them the result that you want, experiment with it. Actually do it yourself. And then after experimenting, then you go back and say, did this thing get me the result I wanted? And if it didn't, then cut it out. And if it did, and you don't vibe with it, but there's another way to get the same result, experiment with that instead. And on that note, I hope that answered your question, man. And my arm's getting tired, so I'm gonna close this video out. I'll see you in the next video.